There's something awful about the moment you realize you've been watched in a place you thought was private. It's not like seeing a stranger on the street or feeling stared at in a crowd. It's worse. It makes you want to tear your skin off. But when it first started, it felt small. Annoying, not terrifying. I'd been living alone in a little off-campus apartment near my university in North Carolina. It was my first time with my own place, not just a dorm or roommates, but mine. Well, mine for $875 a month, but still. I liked it. It was small, just a living room, kitchenette, bedroom, and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it had decent lighting, and I could decorate however I wanted. There was a little fenced patio in the back with some old bricks and ivy. Kind of cute, kind of crumbling. Classes had just started back for the semester, and I was in that early stretch of being tired all the time. I'd wake up, drag myself to a lecture, maybe hit the library, then come home and crash. I barely turned on the TV except for background noise, which is why it was weird the first time I came home and found it on. It was a Wednesday. I remember that, because I had an 8 a.m. and didn't have time to finish my coffee before running out the door. When I came back that afternoon, the TV was playing some midday game show at full volume. I just stood in the doorway for a second, confused. I always made a point to turn it off before leaving. I'm kind of paranoid about wasting power, but I figured maybe I bumped the remote when I was leaving. Maybe it had been on low and the sound got jostled. I wasn't thinking anything more than that. Turned it off and went about my day. It happened again 3 days later. This time, it was tuned to a local news station I'd never watched before. The local news aired long interviews with county commissioners and traffic updates on roads you've never driven. I remember standing in the middle of the living room, remote in hand, just staring at the screen. I knew I hadn't left it on. I'd barely touched the thing in days. But again, I told myself it must have been me. Or maybe the remote got wedged between couch cushions, buttons pressed by accident. Nothing major. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I mentioned it casually to a friend over lunch, just a throwaway, weird thing that happened story, and she gave me this look and said, "You sure someone doesn't have a key?" That idea had not occurred to me. The landlord had done a lock change before I moved in, but it was one of those rickety knob locks you could probably pick with a paperclip and some determination. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I did start double-checking the doors and windows more carefully before I left. The following week, it happened again. Same setup. I came home from class and the TV was on. Same local station. No other signs of anything moved or missing. It wasn't like someone had ransacked the place. Nothing obvious was touched. Just the screen glowing in an empty room, like someone had been watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., I ordered a cheap indoor camera from Amazon. One of those motion sensor ones people use to check on their pets. I stuck it in the corner of my living room, high on the bookshelf, angled toward the couch and the back window. The little red light blinked when it was recording. I tested it before I left the next morning. That day, I made sure everything was off. TV unplugged, doors locked, blinds drawn. When I came back around 4 p.m., the TV was on again. This time, I had footage. I felt sick just loading the video, but I needed to see it. I needed to prove to myself it was a glitch or something stupid. It wasn't. 40 minutes after I left for class, the motion alert kicked on. At first, it was quiet, just the still frame of my living room. Then, a shape at the window, a face. A man slid the back window open like he'd done it 100 times. No hesitation. He climbed through, calm, like he belonged there. He didn't take anything, didn't rifle through drawers or open my fridge or even look around. He went straight to the couch, sat down, and turned the TV on. And then he just watched for over an hour. Didn't move, didn't speak. I couldn't hear sound from the recording, but I watched his body language. He was relaxed, like it was his house, like this was something he did. Then, just as calmly, he turned the TV off, walked to the window, and slipped out again. I don't even remember dialing 911, just that my hands were shaking so bad I had to redial twice. The cops came quickly, took the footage, looked at the window. There were scratch marks on the sill, small ones. consistent with someone using a shim or a tool to lift the lock. They took it seriously. That part surprised me. They said this wasn't the first time someone had reported strange non-theft break-ins in that part of town. A few women had come home to lights on, furniture slightly moved. But this was the first time someone caught it on video. The next day, my landlord installed deadbolts. I started staying at a friend's place. They never caught him, which honestly is baffling. I kept thinking about that hour, about how many times he might have been in there before I noticed the TV, about what would have happened if I'd come home just a little earlier, or if I'd skipped class, or if he just decided to stay. People ask me sometimes if I'm more careful now, if I triple-check locks, if I avoid living alone. Yeah, I'm more careful, but what really sticks with me isn't the fear of it happening again. It's the feeling I get when I sit down to watch something now, especially at night, especially alone, and I start to wonder, am I the only one watching? You know that feeling when something small just doesn't sit right? Not like a bang in the night or a shadow at the window, more like the weight of someone watching from a distance. Nothing you can prove. Doesn't scream danger. Just a tap on the back of your neck telling you you're not imagining it. That's how it started for me. I live alone, in a quiet little rental in a suburban corner of Tennessee, where neighbors wave but don't really know your name. Safe enough that I'd go barefoot to grab the mail, but not naive enough to leave the doors unlocked. I work from home, graphic design, so I've got my routines. Mornings with coffee and silence, afternoons with music, evenings with movies or bad reality TV. I like the stillness. I like knowing where everything is, that nothing changes unless I move it. So when I saw the mark, that first one, it threw me off. It was a faint red smudge, right next to the handle on my front door. Small, maybe the size of a fingertip, almost like a print, but blurred. I noticed it on my way back in with groceries. Figured maybe I brushed against something, marker or ketchup or God knows what from the store, and touched the door without realizing it. I grabbed a Lysol wipe and scrubbed it off. No big deal. But a week later, there was another one. Same spot, same strange shade of red. A little cleaner this time, almost like the outline of a fingerprint pressed carefully into the wood. I remember standing there just staring at it, holding my keys, frozen. My first thought was that maybe the first one wasn't me, and if this wasn't either, then someone else had touched my door. I didn't want to jump to paranoia, but I couldn't shake it. I texted a friend, and even she said it sounded weird. She joked I should set up a camera just to be sure, so I did. I bought a little doorbell cam online, installed it the next afternoon, synced it to my phone. I didn't expect to catch anything, but I wanted proof that it was just maybe a kid playing a prank, or something wind-blown, or a delivery guy who leaned funny. The camera sat quiet for 5 nights. Then came the 6th. I woke up that morning, made my coffee, walked to the front door to get a package I was expecting, and there it was, another red fingerprint, exactly like the others. Same placement, same shape, not smeared, not sloppy, pressed, like it was placed with intention. My stomach dropped. I opened the camera app with fingers I didn't know were shaking. The footage loaded. The motion alert was time-stamped at 3:12 a.m. At first, there was nothing, just the glow of my porch light, bugs flickering past the lens. Then movement, person walking slowly into frame, not in a rush, calm, hoodie pulled up, head down. They stepped right up to the door and lifted a gloved hand, pressed one finger firmly to the wood, held it there, then stepped back, looked up just once toward the camera, and walked away. I don't remember moving from the spot, but somehow I ended up sitting on my living room floor, the footage playing on loop, my coffee cooling beside me. It wasn't random. That person knew what they were doing, and they didn't care if they were caught on camera. I called the non-emergency line and reported it. Didn't expect much, but to their credit, an officer showed up within an hour, watched the video with a grim silence, asked if anything else had happened, I said no. I asked if they thought it was some bored teenager. He shook his head. He said, in that tired voice that tells you he's said this before, that it's a method, a kind of marking system, used by certain people. Burglars sometimes, sure, but also worse. They'll tag doors to track behavior. Who's home and when, who lives alone, who leaves lights on, who doesn't have a dog, who never notices. It's a test. And the fingerprint was my score. He told me to keep the footage, change the locks, and maybe not sleep so close to the front window. And he left with a soft take care that felt less like a goodbye and more like a warning. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the walls felt louder. Every passing car made my breath catch. I kept the lights on like that would help. But the part that still gets me, the thing that makes my skin crawl, I checked the footage one last time before bed, trying to calm myself with some rational explanation. Something I'd missed. And I noticed something. The camera caught that person walking in, but not walking away. They stepped out of frame and never came back. I don't know where they went. I just know they didn't walk back the way they came. If you're drawn to tales like these, consider subscribing to Spectral for more chilling entries waiting to be uncovered. And if you have your own haunting story that you'd like featured in an upcoming compilation, we'd love to hear it. Just email us at spectralentries@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the video. You don't realize how much noise a house makes until you're the only adult in it. I used to joke that being a single mom meant I had to grow eyes in the back of my head and ears like a hawk's. But honestly, most days, I was too tired to notice when the dishwasher beeped or the cat knocked something over. You just start tuning things out because if you didn't, you'd never get 5 minutes of peace. That's probably why the first time I heard the static, I didn't think much of it. It was nap time, midday. My son, Eli, had finally gone down after his usual 10-minute protest. I had just microwaved leftover pasta and was sitting down to answer emails for work when the baby monitor on the counter hissed. Not a sharp noise, just a subtle flicker of static that drifted in and out like a weak signal. I glanced at it. The little screen showed Eli's crib, still and quiet. His blanket barely moved with his breath. I lowered the volume, but then came the breathing. Not Eli's. This was low, heavier, slower. I turned the volume back up. It was gone. I felt that small thump in my chest. That tiny moment where your brain says that was weird, but your body says don't make it a thing. Probably interference, I told myself. Could be a neighbor's baby monitor crossing frequencies. Could be the signal lagging. But the next day, it happened again. Static, then silence, then breathing. This time, I ran to Eli's room. He was asleep. The window was locked. No sign of anything unusual. But when I went back to the monitor app on my phone, something was off. A gray icon blinked under the video window, a little clock symbol I hadn't seen before. I tapped it, pulled up a playback log. There was a file, a recording, time-stamped from the middle of the night, a time I knew I hadn't been awake and definitely hadn't saved anything. It was marked, accessed remotely. I stared at that word for a long time. Then I played the recording. At first, it showed Eli tossing in his crib. Nothing strange, but about 30 seconds in, the camera angle shifted. Just a flick, like someone had moved it slightly. I never touched the camera physically after installing it. And then, there it was again, that breathing, just a few long, slow inhales. Then the video cut off. I reported it to the manufacturer first. They told me to change my passwords, update the firmware, disable remote access until further notice. Nothing reassuring. Then I filed a police report, mostly for peace of mind, expecting them to say it was a glitch or maybe some bored kid hacking random devices. I wasn't prepared for what they told me a few days later. The camera had been accessed several times in the past month. From an out-of-state IP, they traced it back to a man in Ohio, a name I didn't recognize, but they did. Apparently, he used to live in my house. 5 years ago, before it was flipped and resold, it had been a rental. He'd been evicted for reasons I was never told during the sale. But the scariest part? He'd installed smart devices all over the house. Cameras, speakers, plugs, and never fully disconnected them from his cloud account. He still had backdoor access to some of them. The monitor was his, repurposed and reset by the home's previous owner and left behind as a bonus for the nursery. He had been watching my son, watching me, and that breathing, that wasn't interference or lag. That was him viewing live from wherever he was. I replaced every smart device in the house the next day, changed every password, bought cheap blackout curtains for every window, just to feel like I had some control. But I still wake up sometimes and stare at the corner where the monitor used to sit. And every now and then, if I close my eyes too long, I almost can still hear that breath, like someone somewhere is still watching, still waiting,